Hey guys, welcome back to my study lecture. Today the date is 30th October 2023. We're gonna begin with the study session. And if you are here, please ignore the messy desk setup. I really hardly find time to clean it. So let's just randomly 变一个主题。So looks a little bit calendar. I made me a couple of coffee. So we're gonna put the milk somewhere else. Oh, nice. I really have a lot of things here, and I will use that to drink water later. And this one is for tea. I will use another cup. Like now it's still not Christmas, but I already have 3 cups for Merry Christmas, and that will for me take later to the tea. Yeah, that's the plan. I gonna study. I prepare a little bit for 10 hours. I would say now the time is 11:20. We're gonna study until today night, and I will not go out. That's the first rules. That the rules which determined now current study live stream, and so then afterwards what can I still say? Yeah, let's just have a 12-hour study session. Or 10 hour. We will say we have 2 hours break, and 10 hour finish everything, and so let's begin. The music which I currently listen is from the James Hop Cafe. And you can find in the YouTube channel. It's very easy and very popular study music channel. Yeah, okay, I will not I will not I will not book the big one because yeah, cool. Mm. Oh, will we have that watch to count the study time. Um, so, mm, 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 mm. That I will not use that anymore. I guess I am not very much like that one. But if I can have a parallel function, mm, and I don't have the study rules in my YouTube channel, but I can say some. Mm, I'm gonna use this one. I will clean it first. Um, so once you sit, you cannot move. That's that's the first rules. That's the starting rule. Okay, we're gonna use this timer. Mm, okay, I think the German student is more um, compared to, but I don't think that they really know much more information and so on. Finally, a little bit like a formal study channel. Mm, I will list what I did today. By the way, we can talk a little bit about the dream state which exists last night. I currently during this um, 1.5 year, or nearly almost 2 years, which connected with one another study live stream us in Bilibili platform, and that is a Chinese video platform, especially for the young children and so on. And there are a lot of cartoon films and some Japanese movies and so on. And I was kindly thinking during our connection and my perception sometimes driven into her subconsciousness and created a lot of dream states like combines of movie which link a bird and die in the swimming pool and so we call the link film. The meaning and the reason is they will make reason to one another, and instead of from own to find the reason. And that's why, at least from my point of view, I call that the link film. And and by the way, they are pre-use, or they are using a lot of subconsciousness from me. Actually, I like that original one. Like, you first dream about it, and that's everything true, and nothing be designed or disclosed, nothing be disclosed, and nothing be arranged. So everything's real and original, and I really like that. It seems like once I dreamed about two houses, which several houses gathered together, and because some urgency, and they must come into a certain art in the new place which I lived before, the student apartment. And I was currently thinking, after that dream, in 2019, I got into another trap dream state, which they are try to copy that Tina, and made that into made into some official financial channel, financial news agency. And and then in that time, there are only two houses which have number Tina to show, and the feeling is I don't know, but recently, yesterday, and they are rearrange their dream Tina to a shopping center, I would say. And in that time, that was my middle school, but it's not the Oberstufe, it's the Unterstufe middle school. So um, and it is like um, six to eight, six to eighth grade, and so on. And I was wake up, and I know exactly that the dream perception was coming from another study of Shrima, as in Bilibili, and I kindly do not want to converge with our conscious, but they shows that there are some sticky rice ball, and it looks like Fiona, and which very neural, and like neural green. And I was so excited, and suddenly understood a lot of things in that short moment. And that's me, actually. But what I am confusing is that actually that shows from the EGP, and instead of currently our conscious merged together, and I connected one similar, like passing another new country, and very much like the EJP style. And I absolutely feel happy, but which the neurograin he produced is very few, and it's absolutely cannot fit me. And that's why I sometimes thinking whether that is worthwhile to go to another new country and to continue my further study and thinking process, and my mind work, my work in mind. I am not, I don't know, and if it is the intensive more than ever, then why not? And by the way, any prepare lots if it does come true. Yeah. So I try to keep distance from those streams that which are not originated from me. If that they are not trapped into some urgent situation, need to help, I will not converge the dream state. And they are trying to linking with the oil situation, which yeah, which is also a mystery for me. And yeah, that's a long story I will not tell. So we're gonna focus on the study, but I already get one insect in my cup, and someone just fly into and destroyed my cup of coffee, and hinders me to finish drinking only one simple coffee. Yeah, cool. Then we can start using your cup. And is this one, Merry Christmas. Um, 我查吧，我的天呐。We will drink this one. Trusty, a little bit light, hot, dialling. Oh, okay. Let's find out.
What's that material relating to more ephemeral matters? What do you mean by that? I think in this period, I think there is a significant shift in the volume of WhatsApps which we used for discussions reflecting the shift to remote working and the pace of some of the activities going on with people in different locations. And so certainly my experience was WhatsApp became more extensive in its usage than certainly I've experienced previously.
But that is to do with the volume. What is this distinction that you draw between WhatsApps relating to decision making and more ephemeral WhatsApps? What are ephemeral WhatsApps?
I think that certainly from my experience of the WhatsApps that I have seen, the vast majority of those WhatsApps were of an ephemeral nature, and the decisions when they took place were taking place in a normal way and recorded in the normal way. And a lot of the WhatsApps you are seeing, it seems to me, are exchanges which people could have been doing previously by telephone or in corridors or things like that. They are now just recorded in WhatsApp, but are ephemeral in nature, in the same way as if there's a conversation about a policy matter before people go in to others. We're not necessarily recording all of that because it's ephemeral in nature. Where the decision takes place and the process leading to that decision are recorded in a normal way.
You're not suggesting, are you, that the vast majority of these COVID-related WhatsApps are irrelevant?
No, I think they're relevant to the COVID inquiry, but in terms of the decision-making process and the obligation on civil servants to record formally steps in the decision-making process, it's a bit different.
Part of the decision-making process?
Because I suppose in any decision, there is all sorts of ephemeral discussions around a policy. Not all of those discussions are recorded in full, even in the main meetings themselves.
But, Mr. Reynolds, they are all relevant, are they not, to the state of mind of the sender and indirectly the recipient. They are all relevant to the debate about COVID and the decisions which were then being taken, are they not?
That is correct, and that is why I retained all of my WhatsApps, and I handed over my WhatsApps to the inquiry in full.
And that presumably was because you were aware from a very early stage that your WhatsApps would be relevant to any inquiry that might thereafter take place, as well as to perhaps lessons learned exercises, as well as providing a contemporaneous understanding of the thinking of the persons who sent and received WhatsApps.
Correct, yes.
You were aware, were you not, that the WhatsApps from the core decision makers and advisors would all become relevant to due course?
Yes.
Could we have 265.6.9, page 68, please? This is a WhatsApp message between yourself and Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary, in December 2021. So later this year, where after a debate about the general mood and the way in which matters are progressing, particularly on the Omicron front, because this is December 2021. Towards the bottom of the page, Simon Case, PM is mad. He doesn't think WhatsApp will become public by COVID inquiry. But he was clearly not in the mood for that discussion tonight. We'll have that battle in the new year. Martin Reynolds, as of course you agree. Thanks for your help. What was the battle about, Mr. Reynolds?
I cannot recall, but I imagine that the Prime Minister, I'm afraid I can only speculate, but I imagine he hadn't realised that all of his WhatsApps would become public by the COVID inquiry.
Because, of course, as the then Prime Minister, his WhatsApps would form a vital part of a full, transparent examination of the decision-making at the time, as yours would. Yes. When was it first understood in number 10 Downing Street that there might be a public inquiry?
I'm afraid I cannot recall. But I think in certainly the early stages, I and others were not thinking in those terms. Certainly in the very sort of pressured period of early 2020, I don't think I was really reflecting on whether there'll be a public inquiry. I was much more focused on dealing with the day-to-day challenges at that time. So I would have thought it would be after that, but how far after that I cannot comment.
You will know from disclosure, Mr. Reynolds, that Sir Patrick Valence's evening notes, his diaries, as well as some other notebooks and emails disclosing the inquiry, show that the notion of there being a public inquiry first appeared in the general discourse around about the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. Does that sound right? Around about the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. Does that sound right to you?
That sounds entirely plausible.
We've already seen an entry in the notes of Sir Patrick Valence in which he records the Cabinet Secretary, Simon Case, as saying that any inquiry should go on for a decade or more. Once someone like Savile to chair it and keep it going forever, and that's dated the 3rd of November 2020. Did you take part in any debate about the nature or the extent or the time of an inquiry?
I was involved in the discussions which the Prime Minister had about the nature of an inquiry, but I don't think, comment on that particular exchange.
The then Prime Minister made an announcement to Parliament on the 12th of May 2021. Can we have that please on screen? 273904. And then to the second page, please. Mr. Speaker, with permission, I will update the House on our response to COVID. And then if you could scroll through, please, to the next page. The state has an obligation to examine its actions as rigorously and candidly as possible to learn every lesson for the future, which is why I've always said that when the time is right, there should be a full and independent inquiry. And he announces, does he not? Therefore, the institution of that inquiry. He announces, does he not? Therefore, the institution of that inquiry. And then further down the page, a reference to consulting the devolved administrations. And then over one more page, please. He refers to the exercise of identifying and disclosing the relevant information, the burden that will place on the participants. And then further down the page and over the page, he says this in the bottom 6 entries. This inquiry must be able to look at the events of the last year in the cold light of day. This inquiry must be able to look at the events of the last year in the cold light of day and identify the key issues that will make a difference for the future, free to scrutinise every document. As the Principal Private Secretary, presumably you had a hand in advising the Prime Minister and assisting in the process by which the Prime Minister decided that there would be a public inquiry and that it would be announced to Parliament. Do you recall that process, Mr. Reynolds?
The process was actually on the basis of advice from the Cabinet Office and discussion with the Cabinet Office team. So I was present for that discussion, or may well have been present for elements of that discussion, but I was not responsible for the advice and the process through which it came to that conclusion.
You knew, did you not, that the Prime Minister was considering instituting a public inquiry and that would be announced to Parliament? If yes, please.
Yes.
And presumably that process by which the announcement was drafted, by which the decision was made to have an inquiry, took a matter of weeks. Presumably these decisions have just been on the spot.
No, it was probably longer than this.
So at least before April of that year, if this was May 2021, at least a month.
Yeah.
You were party to a WhatsApp group called PM Updates, were you not?
Yes.
Could we have 265631? PM updates from Martin Ramsey's phone. It's a group that was formed on the 16th of November 2020. You created a group for PM updates. It's you, Martin Ramsey. It is indeed. At 2017 on that day, you said, I created a new group focused on updates, diary, etc. from the actual office. And I think in that group, where the Prime Minister, yourself, Keir Watson, Stuart Glasper, Henry Cook, closest.
Okay, we're gonna deal with this.
This was no doubt a hugely important WhatsApp group.
If I can explain the PM updates, that might sort of give you a better sense of actually its importance, which is that we had throughout most of this a system of updating, giving quick decisions he might need to be taking, and that was done initially in paper copy. The PM updates group essentially translated that paper copy into WhatsApp, but it remained, unlike almost any other WhatsApp, basically on email and hard copy. So what you had was, as it were, parallel structures, where what I would do is I was sent an email with the update for the day on. I would put it onto a WhatsApp and send it to the Prime Minister, and then I would take it back to the Prime Minister and send an email out with his reference. And so, unlike the other WhatsApp groups, which all of them will no doubt need to talk about, it was actually a mechanistic way of delivering to the Prime Minister unclassified material, which he could look at, as it were, at an appropriate time each evening and on a daily basis. But actually, the chain of record keeping was all done through email or hard copy or back out again. Essentially, what you're seeing here is the central bit in the process. It goes to the Prime Minister by WhatsApp and is sent back again. And so what I was doing there was, as it were, acting as a way of transmitting that to the Prime Minister. But in terms of the substance of the decisions, some were fairly low level, and some were quite mechanistic. Could be questions about who you wanted to see or things like that.
You're not suggesting that this WhatsApp group is anything other than highly relevant to the information that the Prime Minister is receiving. It deals with matters such as parliamentary business and the dealing with the COVID pandemic, how the DHSC would respond, cabinet affairs, we can see from this page, shielding clinically extremely vulnerable MPs. This was hugely important information. You were telling the Prime Minister daily, hourly, by minute, information he needed to know.
Correct.
And you're not suggesting that it replicated exactly other written material, written emails or notes. You wouldn't surely have just been replicating word for word everything that was being sent by email.
I think I was certainly taking the responses from the Prime Minister, which were typically very short, and relaying them back into email, back out, saying to a wider circulation.
There is information in this WhatsApp group, which runs to 115 pages, that is not elsewhere to be found in notes in his red box, notes to the Prime Minister, or emails.
I'm surprised by that. I think if we checked the number 10 record, we would find that there are emails coming in and out. Since as I say, the content of the WhatsApps was all delivered to me by email, and I transferred it into a WhatsApp and sent it to the Prime Minister and then back again.
The general topics were, of course, the subject of debate in the email, face-to-face conversations, as well as multiple WhatsApp groups. But the detail was not being replicated elsewhere. You weren't cut and pasting other documents into this WhatsApp group.
I was, yes.
In entirety?
Yes. And I was then responding by email, and that's why it's different from the other WhatsApp groups I'm in. So you can see, at least, yes. I mean, I'm not typing these these texts into the WhatsApp itself. I'm literally receiving it onto my phone, cutting and pasting it, sending it to the Prime Minister, and then taking his response and sending it out again.
Why would you need to cut and paste everything from an email into a separate WhatsApp group?
In a sense, it's something actually I introduced with Philip Hammond. It's a way of distilling paperwork to a minister, reducing and boiling it down in a way which means it is readily comprehensible. So rather than lots and lots of separate box returns or billets or whatever, what you do is you distill it into one document, normally of 2 or 3 sides, and then the minister can read through quite quickly every day a whole bunch of updates and other things so it can be updated in an efficient way. This is, as it were, an evolution of that, which I think reflected the Prime Minister's desire to receive it on WhatsApp rather than hard copy, so he could get that information and respond at whatever time was convenient for him, overnight or early in the morning or whenever it might be. So it's a bit different from a normal WhatsApp where I might be typing in a message.
Let's have a look at page 16 and 17, page 16 and 17, which are good indications of the sort of information that you were providing. In the middle of the page, generate speaking to Starmer, Ray Liverpool, Bennett, and I all think a good idea, but just to be advised, isn't it?
Yeah, to be aware.
Netanyahu, the Premier of Israel, has asked for an urgent call re vaccines. We've declined. You then talk about the commercial evictions moratorium, and over the page 17. Vaccine deployment, parliamentary affairs, information about the ECB. Are you saying all this was cut and pasted from other emails? Which
I would need to check but I did not type all of those in the WhatsApp. No. Some of those emails and some of those messages, you were right, may have been things I've added in. But if you look at the majority of that you're looking at, that is all stuff which has been cut and pasted. So, for example, on the screen, the Cabinet Secretary has signed off the following agenda. That is literally cut and pasted from a document I've been sent. Similarly, the ECB announcement, that's literally cut and pasted. So essentially, it's a transmission mechanism. It's different from most other WhatsApps. That isn't to say that some of the responses on there might have been typed in manually, but looking at this list, the vast majority, if not all, have been cut and pasted. And there'll be documents in number 10 which will literally have daily update 10th of December with all of these things in. And there'll be an email to me with it, an email out with it, where I explain that the Prime Minister has noted all these issues.
But not all of it, you would agree, Mr. Reynolds. Some of the information appears only in these WhatsApp threads, correct?
I think some, possibly, but I'd need to check it off. And I think the other thing I would say is it comes back to my point about ephemeral and non-ephemeral. What's actually been recorded here is the flow of update material into the Prime Minister, which is read out again by email.
Mr. Reynolds, all this material is directly relevant, is it not, to the management of the COVID pandemic, whether it's to do with his business in Parliament, or in government, or in Number 10, or Downing Street, or how the government generates responding. It's all to do with COVID, isn't it? The material that we have got. Redacted basis, it's irrelevant and sensitive. Correct?
Yes.
Could we have page 114, please? On the 15th of April of 2021, so just a matter of a few weeks before Mr. Johnson announced the public inquiry into Parliament, you turned on the disappearing message function in this WhatsApp group. New messages will disappear from this chat 7 days.
Okay, guys, we are kindly back and continue. Now the time is 13 or 12 o'clock 12. And yeah, I will add some water in my bottle tea. So, the time is somehow 45 minutes. I don't think that they really bother me, and I don't have that much sorrow to share with if that's someone's currently because because you forget something to resend to your vermieterin, for example, and they will interrupt in some kind of time point, and I don't have that feeling to be interrupted actually. So feel free and feel relaxed. Okay, feel do not think that much, and I do not care. Or I should care more, actually. Yeah. Mm.
We're going to move a standalone Israel funding bill this week in the House. I know our colleagues, our Republican colleagues in the Senate, have a similar measure. We believe that that is a pressing and urgent need. There are lots of things going on around the world that we have to address, and we will. But right now, what's happening in Israel takes the immediate attention, and I think we've got to separate that and get it through.
Hearing from the very new House Speaker Mike Johnson speaking over the weekend on Fox, talking about a standalone bill rather than uniting the Israel-Ukraine conflicts together the way that President Biden has proposed. This has been a perennial question. How is this House going to pass anything at a time of such incredible division? The division is both in the U.S., it's also around the world, including in Israel. And joining us for team coverage right now, Bloomberg's Oliver Cook in Tel Aviv and Anne-Marie Herdern in Washington, D.C. Ali, I want to start there. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, an incredibly polarizing figure before the war broke out, came under a lot of criticism for some of the intelligence failures, did not accept responsibility, put the blame on some of his intelligence officials. How much is he losing the room? Is he losing the ability to lead at a really fraught time?
I mean, listen, a huge amount of pressure is building on the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. And again, as you mentioned, the context in which this is all happening since this war broke out 3 weeks ago, before that, it was all about the rift within the society, which has not been healed, right? It was put to one side because of the war effort. Many of the people, the hundreds of thousands who went to the streets to protest against Netanyahu, rallied behind the war effort. And so for him to go out publicly on social media to basically divert the blame of the attacks and saying that basically it was a failure on his intelligence and the defense side of it rather than his own responsibility was taken extremely poorly, particularly when it was given after a joint press conference by the war cabinet, which is composed in part from an opposition leader, right? This is supposed to be a symbol for this sort of unity. For him to go out and do that, he then deleted it. He then apologized. But again, it speaks to the heart of this issue within Israeli society and the mounting pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu. And then again, probably too early for this conversation, but the longer term, what will be the government that comes after the war cabinet? Because this will be fundamental in shaping the future of Israel, but also its relationship with Palestinians.
And the division is not just isolated to Israel. Anne-Marie, over the weekend, a series of articles about how President Biden is losing some of his constituents, including in certain swing states like Michigan. Axios coming out and talking about how some of the officials advising Biden think that it has never been worse politically for him. How does this sort of play out longer term and shorter term in your view?
Well, domestically, the president is still dealing with weak poll numbers when it comes to the economy. Things like inflation continue to top as part of America's biggest concerns. And now he has another foreign policy crisis, this time in the Middle East. And one of the biggest concerns for this White House is to contain it. It's one of the reasons why it's going to be so interesting when Khalid bin Salman, the Saudi defense minister, comes to Washington, D.C. today. It is clear this administration wants to contain what is going on in the Middle East. What you're seeing in a state like Michigan, which is a key swing state. And remember, Hillary Clinton lost Michigan by just over 10,000 votes. If the third party candidate wasn't there, she probably would have won Michigan. This is critical for the Democratic Party. Biden has two issues in Michigan. One is the fact that there is a large population of the Palestinian diaspora, Muslim Americans. There's been a lot of reporting. NBC had a brilliant story out talking to people who said that we're just going to stay home. We're not going to go out and vote for Joe Biden. We feel like he let us down. There's also the UAW workers and those households. And our poll, when it looked at these swing states, showed that the former president, Donald Trump, is actually making headway into some of these UAW households, which is why Michigan is really an interesting state.
Talk to us a little bit, Anne Marie, about flash forward 1 year. I know it feels like a long time from now, but we are just a year out from the 2024 election. How critical is this issue specifically in the election landscape relative to everything else that's going on?
I think there's too many questions still that remain to try to understand how important this will be on Americans' minds when they go out and vote in just over a year's time. But of course, the fact is, if this does become a wider regional conflict, this can have a tremendous impact on the election. Not just right now, we're talking about the Palestinian diaspora within the United States that potentially voted for Biden in the last election, but maybe will stay home in this one. But what does this mean if oil prices are higher? What does this mean if more Americans are killed in the line of combat? We did see that there's been an increase, an uptick of missiles that are hitting U.S. bases in Syria and Iraq. What if that continues, and what if this metastasizes? And if that is the case, then this could be incredibly difficult for this current White House, and then the Joe Biden campaign to really go out and make their case to continue the presidency next November.
And Maria, it's a loaded question, I know, but I'm going to ask it of you anyway. Where do you think the majority of Republicans and Democrats sit with Israel and Palestine? Do they support a ground war in Gaza? Do they support a two-state solution? I'm just curious to hear your thoughts. The average Republican, the average Democrat, what are their thoughts on Israel? What are their thoughts on Palestine?
There's a lot of bipartisan support to make sure that Israel has the funds they need to defend themselves. And that's what we heard from the new speaker, Mike Johnson, over the weekend. He says this week he wants to pass that aid to Israel. He says he can have bipartisan support in the House. The issue, of course, that he has is he's coming up against more traditional Republicans who want to see the big package. You saw what Mitch McConnell said just the previous weekend, that there are bigger power struggles when you look at China and Russia, and the U.S. needs to be funding all of these national security concerns around the world. So bipartisan-wise, there is a lot of support on the Republican and Democratic side with Israel. You've seen a number of senators and congressmen and women actually fly to Israel since the October 7th massacre to make sure they are standing shoulder to shoulder. At the same time, you will hear politicians talk about the fact what President Biden has been talking about. They want to make sure that if Israel, and they already are going in on this ground invasion, that they are doing so by making sure they're protecting civilians and also pushing for more humanitarian aid to get into Gaza, which this weekend was incredibly difficult.
From your perspective, Ali, on the ground in Israel, how much unity is there still as the war grinds on? I mean, we talked about keeping the room in the U.S., but how about in Israel?
I think that overall, fundamentally, a lot of the Israelis see this as a sort of existential threat and not just sort of rhetorically so.
Start grid. Start watch. Okay, we start from 10 hours. And watch will record it in my phone. And or 11. 11 is better. 12, I am not sure. Then, yeah. So it is start. Mm. So, 11点11个小时，到晚上的加11个小时23点35分。好了，我们现在可以做 everything。And we are now switching the YouTube music channel to Cozy Coffee Shop. The abonnement is 57200. So Mm. Ah.
It's a big competition for equities at this point, where it hasn't been for the better part since 2009. That means likely that you're going to see more flows into equities. You've had big flows this year into long-dated Treasury ETFs, which we think is just a sign that investors are perking up to these better yields that are available.
Barbara Reinhardt, thank you so much for being with us. And Voya Investment Management. There's a magic to duration. I can just imagine there's going to be some kind of meme to this. Just throw that out there. But this is what people have been trying to hook into for so long. And yet it hasn't worked. And this has sort of been the conundrum for a lot of people. When do you sort of get in there?
Yeah, and a lot of people were saying 5, but I've started to hear 6 now. It's interesting how at 4 it was, it's 4th grade, and then, it'll be 5. And then we hit 5, and now I hear 6.
Yeah, well, I think Barbara makes a great point. That asymmetry in terms of total return projections, right? I mean, yields can still go up, but you stand to lose a heck of a lot less if yields come down. And I think that's, if you're a long-term investor, you really just can't afford it.
If you're just joining the program, you do see a bit of a lift again to those yields. So even though people are coming in, that enough to suppress things. 4.89% on the 10-year. S&P futures up 0.6%, 4,162. To that point, this is sort of a question mark, right? Is it enough time that even if there is going to be something that happens, whether it's a demand side thing or whether it's inflation reaccelerating, people still have the confidence to go in? I think this week is actually the tipping point. Maybe I'm just making drama because that's what we do. But at a certain point, don't you say when you get the refinancing agreement and then you see the market's reaction, isn't that going to be telling?
Well, I mean, the U.S. government can still shut down in a few months' time, so there you have it. No, I'm just kidding. I hate to go there, but I think, look,
I'm stating up to create interest.
Look, I think there's no denying the fact that fixed income has its merits in this environment. And look, when an environment, quite frankly, where you're lacking in safe haven options, fixed income can really play that role. Can really add value to your portfolio. It's an absolute it's a necessity to have a proper fixed income allocation.
Who are you? You just like the way you sort of say right now. No kidding, right? You're gonna say. No, I'm just saying exactly. Right, because what's happening in the equity market over the course of this year, it's been all about those safe havens that have performed really well. And it's only the safe havens that performed well in this environment of just abject risk intolerance because bond yields have been moving higher. Well, what really sparked that whole story was inflation and the central bank's response to inflation. But we're starting to get that narrative shift from the central banks. We started with the ECB, but we see the follow-up with the Bank of England, with the Fed, with your slew of emerging markets.
And those safe havens are Apple, Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly. It's not negative.
好搞笑哦！我的
But
天，
coming up, we're going to speak at 8:30 a.m. with Tiffany Wilding of PIMCO. And ultimately, yes, you're talking about the Fed, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan. But how much does it just come down to how much inflation keeps coming down versus the potential for reacceleration?
Bloomberg covers the world with unmatched reach and resources. From more than 120 countries, the moment news breaks, 24 hours a day. Bloomberg, context changes everything.
Bloomberg has enhanced search on the terminal to deliver. You can simply type phrases in everyday English in the command line. Compare financials, find people, analyze markets. You can answer phrases or ask questions. What do you want to know today? Ask a question or visit SearchGo to find answers now.
The top names in global leadership are on Bloomberg.
This is one of my greatest inspiration is Francis Hussain.
Bloomberg, context changes everything. Earnings season is here.
Tons going on, lots of earnings. Beat wherever you look.
Bloomberg breaks the numbers
It's
first
a tale of two earnings. Those from Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Morgan Stanley. That puts his app guys.
with exclusive expert analysis.
Recoveries underway.
It was one of their best quarters ever.
This is a story all about pricing power. We're going to make more money. We're going to make more money. And we're going to make more money and make a bank. And I think that's what we can take away.
Bloomberg television and radio. Context changes everything.
I'll let the Israeli Defense Forces speak to their plan. And war, of course, is highly unpredictable, so it's difficult to predict how it will play out. We will continue to talk to our Israeli counterparts. We'll continue to ask hard questions about how they are thinking this through, how they are proceeding. But ultimately, these are their decisions. If American troops are attacked by Iran and its proxies, we will respond. We did respond. If attacks continue, we will respond.
Jake Sullivan, U.S. National Security Advisor, speaking on ABC. All of the different politicians took to the airwaves, and probably the one that I found most interesting was the new House Speaker, who came out on Fox and discussed the idea of splitting aid to Israel and Ukraine apart, the idea of cutting some of the budget to offset those kinds of expenses, as well as what this means for President Biden's popularity at a time where his own party is getting splintered. Joining us now to really parse through this is Terry Haynes, founder of Pangea Policy. I want to start with Mike Johnson. What we heard out of him over the weekend, how surprised were you to hear some of his points that sound very much like a playbook that comes for another time?
Well, I wasn't a bit surprised, actually. I've been writing for markets for weeks that the strategy that would get pursued is breaking all these pieces apart instead of Biden's idea that they should all be rolled up together. I think what markets ought to notice too, though, is what Johnson doesn't say. What Johnson doesn't say is he's foursquare against Ukraine aid. The Ukraine aid shouldn't happen, that it won't happen. None of those things. What we've got here, what I was always fearful about, and I think is coming true, is that this is going to become a fight about how all these things get done. These things being Israel aid, Ukraine aid, border security enhancements, and that's going to take up most of the rest of the year. But I do think they all get done at the end.
So they get done. We continue to fund or support these two wars. Where do we cut spending in order to accommodate them?
Well, we don't. Bottom line, we don't. The good news and the bad news is really is that on-book spending has really been consistent for the last decade plus. Off-book spending and our commitments, whether it be to housing or to a variety of other things that are kind of under the line, continue to balloon, and that's a big problem. Washington has not yet gotten the memo from the markets that the markets for the first time in 40 years are very concerned about rising debt, rising deficit, and rising U.S. fiscal spending. There isn't a politician in Washington other than Biden himself that's ever heard markets be concerned about that. And Biden's not in a position to care or do anything about it because he's beholden to those left wing who think that endless spending is the right idea.
Okay, so we keep spending. What about with China? There's a lot happening with China this week, which is interesting considering so much happening geopolitically around the world, and yet China-Taiwan is lingering in the background. Tell us your views on what's happening with China. Is there meaning behind the meetings this week that we should be reading into?
Well, Gina, as you know very well, every time markets hear anything good from a U.S.-China perspective, and the current one is the prospect that Biden and President Xi Jinping might meet on the sidelines of the APEC meeting next month. The markets think this is a good thing. But in reality, China's been very blunt about is really through the national security law, through kicking a lot of Western accountants out, now through providing, through a conference this week, more evidence of state control in a variety of areas in financial services, is a world that, as you all talked about in the last hour or so, where China looks increasingly uninvestable. And so I think the kind of cat's out of the bag on China, and even markets are starting to figure out that there's not going to be any kind of long-term rapprochement between the U.S. and China. The best we're going to get is a situation where the competitors and the clashers understand each other well enough not to take the next step into a rising yet again geopolitical risk.
Terry, former Vice President Pence pulled out of the 2024 elections past weekend. Trump leads the polling in some of these early states. I mean, it's still early days, obviously, but I'm curious, do you believe we're past peak Trump? Is there anyone else in the GOP who could even make a run at him?
Well, I'll stick to my earlier views that I think we're a little past peak Trump. What you've got in the early primary
primary states, Damien, is a situation where, the polls right now are basically 50% are in favor of Trump, which means 50% are against him. You probe into the Trump support a little bit more, and you've got another quarter to a half who can be convinced otherwise. And as you point out, it is very early days. We've got, basically 2.5 months before the first, almost a quarter of a year before the first primary season. So, my advice to markets is really twofold. One, stay cool on this till after the first of the year when you have some idea of what's going on, number one. Number two, I think what you do see is a continued winnowing down of the competitors. We're already basically down to three. We're down to Haley, DeSantis, and Tim Scott as the leading challengers. Pence understood he wasn't part of that. So he's very honorably bowing out early. But what you're going to get, I think, is a consolidation that happens earlier and provides a much more unexpected, from market's perspective, challenge to Trump than is now thought.
Terry, Mike Johnson is Speaker of the House, but is he the leading voice for House Republicans? And you know where I'm going with this, right? I mean, you've got Scalise, Emmer, Jordan. I mean, what happens to these gentlemen after their unsuccessful runs for Speaker of the House?
People tend to view new people in positions based on the people that were already there. So markets are very used to that, this strong speaker model, this kind of super majority leader position, whether it be Nancy Pelosi or McCarthy or John Boehner or somebody else. In reality, what you've got with Johnson is a situation where the party regulars, Scalise, Emmer, Jordan, are more empowered now than they were before, and they're really going to be leading the party much more than Johnson. That said, one of the things Johnson also said on the Sunday shows, which bears underscoring, is that they're looking much more seriously at extending government funding beyond November 17th than they would have been, say, a month ago. So, so I have accordingly put my own odds back down to about 40%, but I think the political situation's volatile, and I'll be ready to put it back up again, if and when the Republicans fall apart.
Just quickly here, we're talking about the Republican side and the nominees for the election. Why was Gavin Newsom in China?
Ostensibly to talk about economic ties and all the rest. Really, what he's doing is trying to do what he can to furnish his foreign policy chops. There's a lot of sharks in the water now, and wouldn't surprise me if Biden's feeling like a remora a little bit. Should they falter, and you saw evidence of that even with Vice President Harris's 60 Minutes interview last night. But Newsom wants to put him out there as the alternative, himself out there as the alternative. Republicans would love that because Newsom wouldn't get a vote outside your solidly blue states.
Terry Haynes of Pangea Policy. Thank you so much. Those video images were quite something. When we saw Damien, the idea of Gavin Newsom playing basketball with some kids in China, that didn't go over too well.
Well, I mean, look, he's no Archie Barrett, he's no Jalen Brunson of New York Knicks. But I mean, look, you know what I really wanted to ask Terry? I never got an opportunity to do that. Is all this geopolitical risk that's going out there, all this mishigas. What is the pain trade today? The real pain trade for investors? Is it something blows up in the Middle East? Is it China-U.S. Is it something blows up in the Middle East? Is it China-U.S. ties souring that much further? I'm just curious. What is the pain trade for investors today?
I think the pain trade is something possible.
More conflagrations, more negativity. I think the pain trade is all of a sudden we get some resolution. That's certainly not in any consensus view. I'll take that pain trade any day of the week. So that's all.
I'm an eternal optimist, Lisa. In case you didn't notice, there's a reason I work in the equity market.
That's right, and there's a reason why I focus on bonds, and I think
There's a reason I'm focused on emerging markets.
Really, the key goes even further down. Coming up, Tiffany Wilding.
for the first, call it 18 years of Chipotle, this was you come into Chipotle along the line, you interact with the crew, and you customize your meal. You've got this separate make line, and it's digitized, and so the orders come in, and they're really kind of staged so that if you say at noon, I want to come in at 1 o'clock, we hold that order, and we will send it to the crew like maybe 10 to 1. Right. So it's ready right when you pull up your car.
How do you manage these kind of two different staffing needs, right? And making sure you have the right amount of people at the right time.
We spend a lot of time projecting sales. A lot of it is, it's part of our science. We're trying to bring more science and more AI into it. Because if you get the right sales projection, then you know exactly what your staffing needs to be. So if you get the sales right, you can get the entire restaurant staff perfectly with just a couple people. Our average restaurant now does about over $1 million per restaurant in digital sales.
From the beating heart of global finance, economics, and politics, and wherever newspapers are moving markets, Bloomberg turns to conversations for deep discussions and reported insights. How has that shaped your strategy for the bank? Is this new normal? Is this like a catalyst? Do you think we're in a new phase for digital policy overall? That's a great question. I'm Francie Michael, and this is a pulse of retail over on Bloomberg. 60 minutes until the opening.
Mm. 我也不知道，我觉得这个很奇怪，就这个纸，然后这个纸质，然后它粗糙的有点像墙的感觉，然后写起来非常的适合某一种 degree 那种感觉，就让我觉得很无语。然后行，那就先这样，就先这样写着，其他的我倒没有什么想说的。我不知道那个牛奶黄就牛奶放哪了。我现在要去烧个水，然后喝点茶。然后我今天真的不打算去学校了吗？我的天呐，我可以去学校里面写笔记啊，但是主要是学校里面没有网络，然后下载起来 document 没有那么 easy。我有好多想不清楚的地方，比如说 OECD 这个 unique for room， 然后这个 unique 当时已经是感觉是2月份的事情了，然后但是对，我要转这个第3个小时了，还是西藏进步非常缓慢。这个我可以再把这个信息补充一下。相信就是可能是这样。 Oh.从这里面。 这个不可避免的，然后有一点就是共享了他们的 energy 或者是有这种情况，要不然你怎么办？你 stuff from college, not from U.S. president, or it's also possible, and avoid others to say something like you. Okay, guys, we got interrupted, and I like this song All Alone from Weibo. And we could add up to Mark Ich, I like. And yeah, give it a try, find what's in the message of today and give it a chance. Using limited space and to do some okay, let's begin. So guys, we're gonna close the study live stream. I promised like I will study towards 12 hours. Actually, that is possible, and I once tried 20 hours. That works. And we're gonna close the study live stream, and in the meantime, I will make the URL recording for the university video log, and so we studied like few 20 minutes or half an hour, but whatsoever, and things are going developed in some mode. And see you guys then, and hope you guys stay motivated, and we're gonna see each other in next study live stream. See you, bye, and stay healthy and stay well. And see you guys then, bye.